So, hello, my name is Kimberly Johnson. I am the owner of Prodigal Sons Academy, and our services help. We heal, empower, liberate, and position men after incarceration to be successful. And we also come alongside the greatest support group ever, the mothers, wives, aunties, girlfriends, sisters, grandmothers, whomever, that come alongside these men to help them through. So we provide services for them that keep them strong and encouraged. And I'm so happy that we have this wonderful guest today. She's a woman of faith. She has written 40 books. She has a thriving podcast with millions of downloads. She is a mother of 3, and she's been married for 30 successful years. And I also found out that you're an artist as well. So it's just amazing. So I'm honored with the opportunity to be able to meet with our guest today. Her name is Mary DeMuth. I am so proud to have you. I have so many good questions, and there's going to be so much information for the mothers and the parents out there. So please, everyone, make sure that you like and subscribe and you comment and you share this podcast with everyone because I know it's going to be awesome. So welcome, Mary. So good to have you.
Thanks for having me on. It's a privilege.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are going to talk today about being able to parent wayward adult kids and what it looks like when those adult kids kind of go stray. And as I have shared with so many of you, that our podcast is really geared for helping men after incarceration, but we also want to focus on those parents and the struggle that they go through with trying to keep themselves together, because when we're strong, we can help them be strong. So with that said, we want to talk to women who are feeling like they've lost their grip. Like, how did we get here? And so Mary's book, which is Love, Pray, Listen, addresses how we can help parent maybe from a distance. I don't know. Mary's going to talk about that. But when they're grown, there's not a whole lot that we feel like we can do. So Mary, can you talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to write this book?
Sure. So I was part of a prayer team of women a couple of years ago before my kids were adult kids. And there was a person on there who she had adult kids who had strayed away, and she was not happy about it, and which makes sense, of course. But I just watched her, and I think sometimes we get our best growth by watching cautionary tales unfold in front of us. And every time she had a birthday, every time her kids didn't show up for her or anything like that, her joy was rising and falling on the acts of her adult children. And I thought to myself, if I ever get to that place and if my kids don't go the way that I want them to, I don't want my joy to rise and fall on someone else's choices. And so there had to be a way. And that was kind of the kernel of the idea of the book way back when, before it was even a book baby. But then my kids grew up and they became adults, and they started frustratingly making their own decisions, whatever. And so I remembered my little determination that I didn't want to have that steal my joy, and ended up writing a book about it. Really about all we can do as parents of adult kids is we can love the heck out of them. We can pray for them, and we can listen when, if we have a relationship with them, we can listen.
Hi, I know that you're enjoying the podcast so far, and thank you for tuning in. I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Kimberly Johnson. I am your host and CEO of Prodigal Sons Academy, where we help men become financially independent after incarceration. We also provide services for their greatest supporters, their mothers, wives, aunts, girlfriends, and sisters. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to learn more about us, you can visit our website at prodigalsonsacademy.com. Please like, share, and subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs encouragement and inspiration. Now back to the podcast. So 1 out of 4 women have a loved one who is incarcerated, unfortunately.
Wow.
And it's such a struggle because you go through these phases with your children. And of course, when you have your child, you're thinking, oh, you have this whole thing planned out for them. Of course, you got this perfect frame and everything is laid out. This is exactly how it's going to be. But you can go from taking your son to Little League games at the basketball court to finding yourself in a court of law, standing next to them, from dropping them off for their first day of school to dropping them off at a penitentiary. I mean, it's just, and it seems like there's no time in between when it happens. It's like, how did we get from here to here? And there's just a lot of negative emotions that go along with having a child who's incarcerated. And so my question to you is, what would you say to help someone who's dealing with the guilt of that and feeling like it's your fault, you didn't parent properly? I mean, I'm sure that that's part of your book too, just dealing with, are there decisions, where did I go wrong? Like, what did I do wrong?
It's a great question. And I look at the fact that God had adult children who went astray, and they had the perfect parent in the whole wide world. He was the perfect parent. So even if you did everything perfectly, you gave birth to a bunch of sinners who choose their own path. And it's not necessarily anybody's fault. It's just the fault of humankind. And so that has taken a lot of stress off of me, of realizing God understands he has billions of wayward children. Therefore, and he's a perfect parent. Therefore, I can kind of relax a little bit. And then I can also ask God to help me when I'm really disappointed or when I feel like this is all my fault. He can come alongside because he knows what it's like. He can empathize with how that feels. I think tied into that too, just an extra little nugget, is that a lot of times we have been given this advice, or we've just kind of lived in the culture of, if you parent them right, letter A, then letter B, they're going to turn out perfectly fine on the other end. And that is not necessarily a truth, but we have believed it to be true. And that's why we feel so guilty, because we think, well, if I got result C instead of B, then A must have been wrong. But in actuality, we do our best. It's not to say that we don't make mistakes, because we absolutely do. But every human being has, when they're an adult, makes their own choices. And at that point, we do have to take our hands off and realize this is not about me. It's about them and their choices. I can love them. I can support them. I can be on their team. But ultimately, their choices are theirs.
I mean, there's like a million outcomes that can come from being a mother and a father and doing your very best. It's still a big, wide world out there. And the world has changed so much.
Yeah.
There's just so many voices out there that can become a parent along with you, whether or not you like it. You just can't restrict them from everything as much as you might want to try. So you have a saying that I've heard of your new story starts today. So can you share with our mothers, wives, aunts, and so on, can you share with the women, like, what does that saying mean to you? And I want to preface that with the idea of, a lot of times, especially when you have a wayward child of any kind and you're in the church and you've got this big wide audience that's watching everything that's going on, sometimes, especially if you have a child who falls by the wayside and is incarcerated, you want to hold that to yourself. There's shame, there's guilt, you never want to admit that. But how does that relate to someone who's feeling like, I'm just going to hold on to this and I don't want anyone to know and I'm just going to hide it?
Yeah, I often tell people an untold story never heals. And what I have found in my own life is, if I keep it inside of myself, there's a lot of crazy things that happen inside of my brain. First of all, I think I'm the only one. No one else is dealing with this. I am full of all this shame and nobody else feels this way. And then it causes me to isolate, which means I am shortchanging the very way that God is going to bring healing. He brings healing through community, but a lot of times we stiff arm that community. And so what happens often, if we push our stories down, it's like a beach ball in the ocean. We can push it down for a period of time. It's not hard to do, but eventually it pops up in our actions. And so we might find, like, saying things that we said, I will never say that, like my mother said it to me, but it comes up in our actions. And that's where it gets a little bit stressful. And that's why it's important to get it out of yourself. Now, there are people listening that that just freaked them out totally. They don't want to share their story. Well, my little bit of encouragement is it is hard, and you do need to find a safe person, not a judgy person, but a safe person. But if you're still scared, I would recommend that you write it down somehow or speak it into your phone and record it so that it's out of you physically. And then as you become brave and as you meet a really safe person, share that audio clip or share that piece of paper and have them read it or listen to it. And then you have a shared burden and you're no longer alone. And all of that shame is going to just fly off of you and you will have freedom like you cannot believe.
That's awesome. That is a wonderful way of doing it too, because I think when it's written or when it's recorded, you don't have to say it out of your mouth to the person, and it kind of lifts some of that stress off of you. I could see how that would be beneficial. So what about the situation where you might be ready to talk about it, but your loved one doesn't want you to talk about it?
And that, I mean, if you're talking about your adult child, then that is something very sensitive. And because they're an adult, they get to choose the narratives that are going out there. And so that's where permission is asked, like, hey, I really want to talk about this, but I want your permission first. And if they say no, then you do what a lot of people do, and you talk about it in the third person, or you say, a lot of people deal with this. And that way, in a way, you can share your story without having to name a name or out someone who's, going through a difficulty. And there is something too about having some significant healing between the time that you share it in retrospect. So like, for instance, I'm a literary agent, and I agent books to be published. And there was one time someone sat down with me and they said, I'm writing a book about divorce recovery. I was like, that's great. So when did your divorce happen? I was thinking, 5-10 years ago. Oh, it's not final yet. I was like, you can't write about it. You're still too close. And so sometimes you need some editorial distance from the pain to be able to share about it with redemption. And until then, you can talk about it like as other people experience it instead of your own experience.
What is the pathway? Like, how can we actually be able to execute being able to still parent without parenting for an adult child? Like, what does that look like to you?
So when we begin our parenting adventure, it's high control. So you have a toddler who runs out in the street, you chase after that toddler and tell them no. And you don't just let them have freedom, because that would be disastrous, but you're working your way out of a job. So you're teaching your child to become more and more independent. And hopefully by the time they leave your house, they have been able to make some decisions on their own, and your role shifts. And this is where I think a lot of parents get into trouble, because they're so used to 18 years of doing it one way. And then suddenly on this magical birthday, they turn from parent / potential friend. And is a whole different role. A coach is someone who comes alongside, who listens, who doesn't offer advice unless it is asked for. Some football coaches probably give advice kind of in an angry way, but for the most part, like if you're a coach, like in coaching somebody one-on-one, your goal is to help the other person come up with solutions for their lives and for their problems. And so we have to shift our mindset from high control parenting to almost no control parenting, which is a very disconcerting thing, because we mamas like to control. So it's not an easy transition.
No, it isn't. Yeah. We are definitely hands-on, I would say, whether you like it or not. And I think sometimes it's, I can just share my little bit of that with my parenting was a little different, because my son and his father and I were divorced at age 2 for him. So he has lived his whole life just kind of being very structured and having to go here on this day, there on that day, that holiday here, that, just that whole thing, so by the time I think he was 18, he was like, oh, well, what do I do? So there was just like confusion. So I still think, depending on your situation, maybe that Do you think that there's a level of coaching versus parenting? Is there like a weaning period that happens, or do you start the weaning like at 16, 17? Like, you don't want to just cold turkey.
And so, yeah, I guess it is good if you're weaning them off and you're training them how to be an adult during those teen years, which is really helpful for parents of middle schoolers, you know, to know that now that they are training them for adulthood and to begin to let go of control and letting them make decisions and letting them fall and letting them fail. I think what in high control parenting situations, what happens is control, control, control. And there was a study done of high control parenting, like really helicoptery hover parenting. And that they said the study was that they were some like 8 times more likely when they got to college to follow a cult leader. And it's because they needed somebody above them to tell them what to do. And if there's a vacuum there and they've never self-directed, then they're going to go to a guru to help them. And that's scary. Or they're going to go to someone on the street, or they're going to go to, you know, someone that has a strong personality. So we have to teach them how to have their own mind before they leave the house.
That's a good one. That's absolutely true. So just getting back to the mothers, because I know that there are some women out there that want to separate themselves, but it's like the moment that they're having some joy, they might think about, oh, wait, my son or daughter or whoever is not enjoying themselves right now. So how can I?
Right.
Like, what would you say to that parent?
Wow, it's a really hard question. And I do go back to the source of joy is not circumstances or positive or negative. The source of joy is identity and knowing who you are. There's more resiliency in you if you take care of yourself, and you will be more available to that child if you have the joy that you need, which gives you the sustenance of being able to be there when they actually really do need you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. And I think that's what mothers need to hear. If my joy is a benefit to them, I can do it.
Yeah. It is. And if you can maybe view it altruistically like that, like I'm working on myself and my joy level, maybe I can't do it for me, but I can do it to be present for the people whom I love in my life. And that becomes an altruistic goal. And then it feels a little easier because there's a lot of mamas out there are really other-centered. They're really centered on their kids. They're really centered, which is great. I mean, it's servanthood. It's lovely.
Well, do you have any closing words for us? Any final suggestions? I mean, of course, we want to get your book. It's available. Let us know where it's available. And I think it's beautiful. I think you're offering our viewers 30% off of the book. So where can we find your book? Where can we find you so we can follow you? I know you have your podcast as well.
It's so pretty. Look how pretty it is.
It's beautiful.
It's available wherever books are sold. And I do have a podcast. If you feel like no one in the world is praying for you right now, it's called prayeveryday.show. And I pray for you every single day of the year. It's only 5 minutes long. I read a bit of the Bible to you, and then I pray according to those verses. But I also, in speaking of prayer, I have created something for your listeners. They can go to marydemuth.com/LPL, which stands for Love, Pray, Listen. So marydemuth.com/LPL. And they can receive a whole year of weekly prayers that have fill in the blanks. So you can put your son's name, like if you have your son's name is Samuel, you can put Samuel's name in that prayer and pray that for them you have a new prayer every week for a year, and that's free. So that's where people can find me.
That's awesome. That is a wonderful idea. I never would have even thought that someone was doing that. That's beautiful. So, but thank you so much. And please check out Mary. Please like and subscribe to this channel. We'll have more episodes like this that are going to help you and build you up. And comment below and make sure that you check out Mary at her various channels. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.